So let's discuss the superficial muscles of the back. Now, there's a couple of things that superficial back muscles all have in common, is that these superficial back muscles are largely involved with the spinous processes in the vertebral column. Now, the superficial back muscles are a set of back muscles, but there are also deep, intermediate and deep back muscles. What distinguishes superficial back muscles from deeper back muscles and intermediate back muscles? So the thing that's specific about superficial back muscles is that superficial back muscles support and move the upper limb. Okay, so superficial would support and move the upper limb, and they would act on like the deltoid and the humerus and basically the upper limb, right? Whereas deep back muscles will support and move the vertebral column, which is along here. And which rami the spinal extensions will use, the spinal nerves will use, is what distinguishes also. So the ventral rami of the spinal roots, as the spinal roots come out, they have a ventral rami, the spinal trunk goes into the ventral rami or the dorsal rami. Now the ventral rami, so the front one, will innervate the superficial back muscles as shown here, whereas the dorsal rami will innervate the deeper back muscles. So the ventral rami will innervate trapezius, because these will support and move the upper limb, and the latissimus dorsi, and the levator scapulae, and the rhomboid minor, rhomboid major. Let's look at the trapezius muscle first. The trapezius muscle, if you had a reflection of the other half, the contralateral side of the body, you would see that the trapezius muscle is like a triangular flap. It's literally like a triangular flap, like a kite. And this kite will together make a trapezium-looking quadrilateral structure. So this is what a trapezius muscle would have looked like. What you have to remember about trapezius, like a gymnast or trapezius, it's going to affect the scapula. It's going to affect the scapula. Remember that. This is a trapezius muscle. As you can see, it actually comes from the occipital bone on the skull. That's where it's going to originate from. So it's going to originate from the external occipital protuberance on the occipital bone in the skull. It's also going to go through the ligamentum nuchae, because this external occipital protuberance is going to be between the highest nuchal line and the superior nuchal line. So, got it? Originates from the external occipital protuberance through the ligamentum nuchae. Now, also originates from the medial nuchal line. We know that. Now, it will attach, or it will also origin from the spinous processes C7 to T12, and it will insert on, firstly, if you look at this, I've labeled this, it will insert on, what's this? The spine of the scapula. Number one, so the trapezius muscle will insert on the spine of the scapula, then it will go to the acromion, and then it will go to the front of the body and insert on the clavicle, the lateral third of the clavicle. What innervates the trapezius muscle, you ask? It is, in fact, because it is associated with the skull, it's going to be a cranial nerve, and the cranial nerve that's going to innervate it is the spinal accessory nerve, also known as cranial nerve 11. This is going to be through the ventral rami. Spinal accessory nerve, cranial nerve 11. Got it. Now, let's have a look at the levator scapulae muscle, and then we will look at the rhomboid minor and rhomboid major, and then we will look at the latissimus dorsi. So levator scapulae is, if we look back at this diagram, here's an overview of the muscle. This is a trapezius muscle. It's going to be like a square-shaped muscle right at the top. Now, here you're going to find rhomboid minor at the top, the thinner, smaller one, rhomboid major here, and levator scapulae here. Minor, major, levator. The common things about these is all three of these are going to be innervated by the same nerve, as we will see later on. Minor, major, levator. Latissimus dorsi, as you can see, is associated. It's going to go around and insert on the intertubercular sulcus on the humerus. So I'm going to say this is associated with humerus. I told you that trapezius is associated with scapula. Oh, I don't think I told you that, but I will tell you that, scapula. And levator scapulae, it's in the name. It's associated also with the scapula. The trapezius is completely to do with the scapula. Not only does it help in shrugging the shoulders, and that's elevation of the scapula, bringing your shoulders upwards, it's also going to help in adduction of scapula, which is bringing the back shoulders back inwards, and depression of the scapula, moving it downwards, and all in all this can cause rotation of scapula. Okay. Levator scapulae originates from, it's a very, very small muscle, and as you can see, if you pay particular attention to where it comes from, it actually comes from the first 4 cervical vertebrae, or the first 4 vertebrae. That's it. It will insert on the superior angle of the scapula. Because it affects the scapula, you could have predicted that it's going to insert on the scapula. And with the major, minor, and the levator, they're all innervated by our dorsal scapular nerve. There's only a couple of nerves you need to remember. You need to remember the spinal accessory nerve because it innervates trapezius muscle. Then you need to remember that minor, major, minor, and levator are all innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve. Finally, for latissimus dorsi, you just need to remember thoracodorsal nerve. Okay? Now, this is going to elevate the scapula. Got it? Done. Rhomboid minor, rhomboid major. I have a rule for you to remember where these come from. First of all, let's look at rhomboid minor. Rhomboid minor, just remember it comes from the last 2, and major comes from the first 4. If you're minor, you're less and you're lower, so you're going to come from the last 2. And if you're major, you're going to come from the first 4. Now, rhomboid minor is the smaller one at the top, major is the bigger, fat one at the bottom. Rhomboid minor comes from the last 2 cervical vertebrae, C6, C7, and it inserts on the medial border of the scapula. Both of these, minor and major, as you can see, insert on the medial border of the scapula. But this one comes from the first 4. So it comes from the first 4 thoracic vertebrae, T1 to T4 or 5. And it will insert on the medial border of the scapula. Both of these, minor, major, and levator, are all innervated by the dorsoscapular nerve, which comes from cervical root 5, and it comes via the brachial plexus. It doesn't just come straight, okay? It has a root, and it's called the brachial plexus. So, once again, to revise this, the trapezius, you need to remember that its origin is the external occipital protuberance, and it inserts on the spinous scapula, the acromion, and the lateral third of the clavicle. Levator scapulae is our interesting one, and it's going to come from the first 4 cervical vertebrae, and it's going to insert on the scapula because it's in the name, scapula. It's going to insert on the superior spine of the scapula, and major, minor, and levator are all 3 innervated by the dorsal scapular nerve, DSN, Nintendo DS. Major and minor, major comes from the first 4, divide 4 by 2, and then minor comes from the last 2. Major is going to come from the first 4 thoracic vertebrae, and it's going to insert on the medial border of the scapula, and minor is going to come from the last 2 cervical vertebrae and insert on the medial border of the scapula. Now, rewind that if you didn't understand that. Here is the latissimus dorsi. It's our widest muscle, as in the name, and it's going to originate from here. It's going to originate from 3 points you need to remember. Firstly, it's going to originate from the spinous processes of T7 to T12, last 6 thoracic vertebrae, and also L1 to L5, and the last 4 ribs. It's a couple of numbers to remember. 7 to 12 is a difference of 5. L1 to L5 is 5, and last 4 ribs, and it's going to insert on the intertubercular circles of the humerus, so you know latissimus dorsi is going to affect the humerus. And how does it affect the humerus? It's going to adduct the humerus and extend the humerus. That's it.